At this point I finally have to out myself. I was a product specialist for almost 3 years at Germany's most notorious synthesizer manufacturer of the 90s, Quasimidi Musikelektronik. And in this function, I personally invented the name of a once mass-produced and nowadays nearly legendary synthesizer. And this is it, the Polymorph. Sometime in the winter of 97-98 at Quasimidi we were quite inspired by the new trend of virtual analog synths, like the Virus and the Nordlied. Roland had just announced the JP8000. And at the Musikmesse, the boss really wanted to show off with another sensation besides the now finally functional Sirius. Because we didn't want to remain the raving Groovebox brothers forever. And so we were on the verge of finally realizing a more ambitious product than the Rave-o-lution 309 or the Sirius. These two devices were already the second generation of synths after the Quasar Technox Raven, based on a much more powerful engine. And this was a sound card chip from Dream, from which Jörg Schaaf and his small team had however squeezed the absolute maximum. Despite all the weirdness and shrillness of the devices and their partly dubious reputation, you just have to leave it at that. To this day I always have to smile when I play one of those instruments. And well, the sound technically rather debatable SID chip from Commodore became at one point a typed cult object too. So the new one had to be a polyphonic virtual analog synthesizer. As an additional feature, it should have a step sequencer with its own hardware surface. The whole thing was strongly inspired by the sequencers in those old Moog modular systems. And modular was not at all a topic at this time. Dieter Döpfer was just coming out with the first modules and was rather smiled at on the fairs when he presented it in his white lab coat. So the front panel of the new synthesizer was already laid out. And the first sequences that blubbered out of Jörg Schaaf's office were as promising that Klaus Schulze had already blindly pre-ordered several devices. Later he even got them delivered in a special black edition, just in time for his tour. Since Quasimidi was located in a remote place at the end of the world in the deepest part of Hessen, I used to sit together with my colleague Andy every Friday night. At this time, the second season of Star Trek Voyager was on German TV. We were fascinated by the adventures of Captain Janeway and her crew, sitting in front of our good old Löwe tube TV. Afterwards, we usually sat down in the studio and gave our synthesizers the spurs until the early morning. In one episode, Belana explored an alien planet with the crew. And while watching the tricorder readings in the German dubbed version, the following legendary words were spoken.
Die Behausungen bestehen aus einer legierten Polymermatrix, die uns völlig unbekannt ist, Commander.
As experienced Trekkies, we found this quite funny, because a polymer matrix is nothing other than plastic. And we acknowledged this little punchline with appreciative smiles. The following Monday morning, the horror took its course again. Traditionally, some of the employees met for breakfast in the kitchen of the old company headquarters, which was approximately 3 square meters in size. Besides this was the moment when one could fathom out through the clouds of smoke, because half of the employees were chain smokers, and I started to smoke myself at some point. How the mood of Jörg Reichstein was, the infamous boss of the company at that time. He was a choleric misanthrope and also had a hard time in many other matters. Unfortunately, there's nothing to gloss over, and this is also the main reason while the company went out of business 2 years later. It was certainly not due to a lack of commitment or ideas on the part of the employees. I experienced the engineering and technical team around Jörg Schaaf at that time as a creative and ingenious collection of guys who first said yes to all the ideas and then thought about how they could implement them, with the sometimes quite limited possibilities at their disposal. There was soldering and coding until late night, under use of all family obligations, what the cigarette packets yielded. Anyway, one of those Mondays was about the new front panel and about how to name the new synthesizer. Its core competences were polyphony and the morphing sequencer. So morphing was already quite a buzzword at this time. And while I was painstakingly filtering the residual oxygen out of the nicotine-saturated air and thoughtfully dipping my tea bag in the microwave water, I had a flash of inspiration. In a blink of lightning, the Holo Doctor appeared in front of my eyes, and my inner tricorder immediately spat out the correct values. Hey, how do you find polymorph? I threw in the round. And that was one of the rare occasions where spontaneous agreement prevailed and even the old Reichstein agreed with enthusiasm. So my day was saved. The boss disappeared in his office and continued to tinker with his design and the lettering, which he later presented to me with enthusiasm. And for which he also received great praise. And I had a few hours of quiet to do my work. By the way, rave-o-lution 309 was his idea, and except for him, we all somehow found it quite embarrassing. Yes, people, that's how it was. Maybe I will tell more about this crazy time soon. But unfortunately, I have almost no photos or videos left from that time. So if any of you still have memories and other materials about Quasimidi, feel free to leave a comment. It would be nice if we could get in touch. So much for that. So here is a little demo with my polymorph controlled with my freshly refurbed Sirius. Have fun. Peace.